What is up, everybody, and welcome to Celtics Talk Weekly Postgame Live. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. Alongside of me tonight, Franco, joining me after this exhilarating Celtics win on the road in Sacramento, California. The Boston Celtics pull out an unexpected victory, 144-119 in Sacramento over the Kings. And the Celtics do it without their best player, Jason Tatum, who misses tonight's game with an ankle sprain after sustaining it last night, of course, in San Francisco in what became a hellacious loss against the Golden State Warriors last night. Tonight, the Boston Celtics, it looks like a game in which this might be a giveaway game for the Celtics on the road, second night of a back-to-back on the West Coast on a road trip, but it's not, Franco. It's absolutely not. The Boston Celtics go absolutely nuts. 5 players reach 20 points for the Celtics tonight, and they pick up their 21st win on the season. Franco, your initial
Well, my initial thoughts as Seamus comes back in is the team really pulled together tonight in a night that they were coming off a back-to-back, no Al Horford, which that was kind of the debate going into tonight's game, was whether they were going to be able to have Al Horford or Kristaps due to the minutes restrictions. And they were able to pull through. Jason Tatum was injured tonight and his absence didn't really affect the team, and it allowed Jaylen Brown to really step up as that leader and take the most shots on the team, and by having 21 shots on the board, Derek White and Jrue Holiday were able to act as the guards and really utilize on-ball situations. And Jrue Holiday had a sneaky triple, 2 rebounds under a triple-double for tonight. And Sam Hauser, Seamus is getting his camera back on. Sam Hauser was able to fill in tonight and was able to carry a plus-minus of a positive 24. And as much as he is mainly utilized as a shooter, but the Celtics have been really molding his game and helping them kind of round out their lineup, which I would think that O'Shea Brissett and Lamar Stevens would be doing. And with the loss of Grant Williams last year, that was one of the key issues. But all around, a great performance. They were down in the first quarter, so it was looking like it was going to be an iffy game, and there he is.
Yes, I feel like my camera may have died at the right time. It was right at the end, right when I was getting ready to pass it over to you, and then zip, my screen goes black, and I had a little bit of an inclination that maybe that might happen. I was waiting to get over with my speech to actually plug it in, but it didn't make it at all, and I feel like you went on a little run there like the Celtics tonight, right there, next man up mentality.
Yeah,
in the past shows, I've been on the other end of that before, where either Rob or Justin, they'll be hosting the show and they'll completely go off camera. And this literally 2 years ago. And I'm sitting here like, uh-oh, I've never hosted. I've never flown the plane before, but here we go. Let's fly it. And now you see 2 years later, I'm now just hosting. So it's a completely different situation, but great job, Franco, on taking over the show during that technical difficulty. That little, the meme where it's like the 0 days meme where you got to put up the 0 days, 0 days without technical difficulties on the show. I feel like every single show, there's at least one moment in the show where it's like, all right, either the internet is off, my audio is off, My camera's dying. One of these days, it'll be like, man, it'll be 365 days, a streak of no technical difficulties, and we'll get rid of the zero. But
We wouldn't
right
be
now,
broadcasting if it wasn't.
but
But
anyway, I am back here. Of
I
course.
was talking up Peyton Pritchard tonight, how he was performing off the bench, it really living up to that spark plug mentality. Jason Tatum was out tonight, so the team really was able to give the other players. Jaylen Brown led the team in shots, but we saw players like Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and Derek White, who has we could just talk the entire rest of the show about if we wanted to. Uh, all were able to shine without Jason Tatum on the court because it's more opportunities for them to have that ball in their hands. And what they did with Kristaps tonight is Kristaps is bigger than you, and we're just going to attack you down low. And when the you see what happens when this team gets down low instead of hucking up a three every time, which kind of switched over at the halfway mark, which hallelujah coaching adjustments, uh, and we see Jaylen Brown and Kristaps both had 8 free throws at the line tonight and only missed one each.
Yeah, as of late, I want to give this player, and I've been giving him some praise on post game as of late for his aggressiveness, but it's just getting to a point where tonight it comes out yet again. And I believe this player, the spotlight needs to be on him a lot more than it's been. And that is Jaylen Brown. He does not win our player of the game tonight. He could have. Now, these last two games, he definitely could have. Jaylen Brown's line tonight is a player of the game type line. 28 points for Jaylen Brown, 6 assists on the night, 5 rebounds for JB, and of course 11 of 21 from the field, so 52% shooting line for Jaylen Brown on the night. And you look at the turnovers, zero, folks, zero turnovers on the night for Jaylen Brown. Absolutely incredible. And this is all coming as well amidst a streak where Jaylen Brown, and this is really what I want to spotlight and highlight within his game, he is being ultra aggressive going towards the rim right now in this streak for the Celtics, and this little run the Celtics are on right now, the past couple of weeks when they've really turned up the heat on their opponents. Jaylen Brown only takes 3 threes tonight. He misses all 3 of them, which, what can you do? He only took 3, missed 3, whatever. However, the volume of threes, only 3 3-point attempts. The rest of his attempts come inside the arc. 18 2-point attempts for Jaylen Brown tonight. And this is on a night where the Celtics, too, they still chuck up 42 3-point attempts. Now, I will mention, Kristaps mentioned this in his post game as well. Celtics are less so chucking up threes now and are now creating a lot more rhythm threes within their offense and threes they're more comfortable with taking. However, they still chuck up, I want to use that term, 42 3-point attempts tonight. And Jaylen Brown only takes 3, takes 18 2-point attempts. And he is the player setting the tone, being aggressive, going towards the rim, putting pressure on opponents' defense tonight against the Kings defense, completely breaking them down, opening up those 3-point opportunities for others. And this is what we want to see from Jaylen Brown every single night, as well as Jason Tatum when he comes back into the lineup, which I suspect is very, very soon. I don't really think that injury is very much to look at. He played for most of the game last night after that injury. So Jason Tatum will come back healthy. Jaylen Brown, if he's playing at this level, if both of them are being aggressive, going towards the rim like this, whew, this is why the Celtics team is so dangerous. And I was even talking to my friend earlier tonight saying, this team, this Celtics team, without Jason Tatum, they're still maybe potentially a top 10 NBA team. Like, look at what we did to the Sacramento Kings on the second night of a back-to-back on the road. And Jaylen Brown, now, for as much as we question what it may look like if he was the number one guy, you kind of see some of the results in which if Jaylen Brown needed to improve areas of his game to become the number one guy, which ultimately, whether you're the number one, number two, number three, number four, whatever, you should always try to be improving areas of your game all the time. However, Jaylen Brown over the past couple of weeks has legitimately improved some of the flaws within his game that he started the season out with. And a lot of people said that, oh, he's too old to improve. He's reached a point in his career where he is the player that he is. And Jaylen Brown so far, since all of that conversation to start the season, has completely proven the doubters wrong and given them nothing to work with whatsoever. And if he's doing that right now, as I mean, let's be honest, he is the number two option on the Celtics. Some nights he can be considered the number one option, depending on the shot attempts. But if he's doing this right now, the $304 million contract for Jaylen Brown, nobody, I mean, off the bat, nobody should be worrying about that whatsoever. But it's going to pay dividends very much so for the Celtics because of his ability to be this two-way superstar alongside another two-way superstar in Jason Tatum the Celtics have. I don't think we realize, but Jaylen Brown, I really do believe if he was on another team as the number one superstar, he would get a lot more praise than he does next to Jason Tatum. And I think he knows that as well. And it's just part of the sacrifice that comes with being in that position on a championship level of squad. And in the long run, he's going to get paid, he's going to get his recognition. But truthfully, Jaylen Brown, I believe, is amongst some of the league's best players. And tonight's performance just proves that to me wholefully. Wholefully. And Franco, for you, Jaylen Brown, uh, the past couple of weeks, we've been on post game a couple times here, but
Mhm.
for you, what has been the most impressive part of Jaylen Brown's improvement so far within his game the last couple of weeks? Because there are multiple areas you could look at it within his improvement, whether it's the shot attempts, whether it's his aggressiveness. He's getting after it more on D as well. He's running more in transition. So, what to you has been most impressive about Jaylen Brown and getting over the hump?
So where Jaylen Brown is going to succeed in this offense, he's the captain on the court, the facilitator, energy shifter, put it any way you want to, come up with 1,000 different nicknames for it. When he is playing at his full potential, not worrying about, oh, how many shots have I made tonight? Oh man, I need to really light it up on the scoreboard tonight, and I have something to prove for myself. When he is playing team ball and the ball is getting facilitated to every person on the starting lineup, when Jaylen Brown is playing well, you'll notice that almost everyone else on the starting lineup is as well, getting over 20 points. It's never just a Jaylen Brown carried the Celtics to a win tonight. Jaylen Brown helped to lead the Celtics to a win, and the team really just has no problem getting behind him. And that's when Jason Tatum is supposed to come in as the dominant scorer, the silent leader who leads by his performance on the court and pretty much the way he carries himself and game in and game out. And it's kind of a thunder and lightning effect with the two guards, and that's what I've always wanted to see out of the two. And I feel like Jaylen Brown is really adapting to that role of being now the most tenured player on the team, uh, and he, it's his team. And yes, we need Jason Tatum to be in the MVP conversation when it comes down to the end of the season. We want him to be putting up those numbers, but if Jaylen Brown isn't right behind him in the accolades, I don't know where we'll be.
And Jaylen Brown on this season so far, I think I know I know a lot of I know a lot of people maybe disagree with this out there, but Jaylen Brown, I know, amongst the league's leaders, will not be in this conversation at the end of the year because his numbers will not be up there. But I think some of the MVP caliber players in this league, Jaylen Brown belongs amongst that level of player. And I believe that this current stretch, if it continues into the future, I think we'll see that come into fruition. Uh, However, we all talk about the narrative between Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum being on the same team, and anybody being on the same team. It's always going to be somebody's going to have the hierarchy over the other. And you just think about a couple of years ago, Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, they were on the same team, and it was always, who's more important to the Warriors, Kevin Durant or Steph Curry. And the reality was both were all-time greats in their own respect and did a lot for those championship teams in that run in which KD was on the Warriors. And amidst that stretch, uh, you see both of those guys on their own teams. They are star players within their own right, and together they were even more powerful. And with the Celtics, the conversation about Jaylen Brown, he's going to be a Celtic for a long, long time, I believe, with Jason Tatum. And those two players next together, I believe they're all-time greats, one another next to each other. And it doesn't matter whether they're on different teams or not, or whether they can do it on different teams, because I don't think they will really have to in the primes of their careers. But ultimately, the Celtics tonight, not with Jason Tatum at all for this game, not without Horford either. No Horford, no Tatum, no Luke Cornett. So the big man rotation a little thin again tonight for the Celtics. And of course, the forward rotation without arguably the team's best defender. No Jason Tatum tonight. But I want to bring up the lead tracker for tonight's game in Sacramento, because this one it's right. I mean, there you go. There you go, folks. I know that here on the post game, the lead tracker usually looks like this, like the margins are fairly similar. But I just want to point out here a lot more boxes or columns within this graph than normal on the post game show. So really looking at the margins for this particular lead tracker and this game flow, if we stacked it up against some of the other lead trackers, now I know this one looks a little bit similar, like I was saying. The Celtics, they really ran away with this one in a way they haven't ran away with the game all year. And they've run away with a couple of games, don't get me wrong, but this one for the Sacramento Kings is definitely not one to remember. And you see there the biggest lead of the game coming late in the fourth quarter, a 30-point lead for the Celtics, and marking a 42 42-point turnaround from the first quarter, where it looked as if when the Sacramento Kings were up 12 points, it was, I believe the score was 23-11. At that point in the game, it looked as if maybe potentially the Celtics were in a spot where, yep, second night of back-to-back, no Tatum, here we go. Here we go. This is not going to be good. And you see in the first quarter, the Celtics, they completely relinquish, erase the Sacramento Kings 12-point lead, and all the way to the point where they take a 30-point lead late in the game. And in the third quarter woes be gone, Franco, because the third quarter for the Celtics as of late has been absolutely spectacular. Even last night in Golden State, last night in Golden State, that was the mind-boggling experience about that game, is the fact the Celtics actually had a good third quarter in that game. Maybe didn't finish it out ideally, but most of the quarter for the Celtics was a great quarter. And tonight they do the same thing. They don't give up the lead this time. They don't let the Warriors chip. They don't let the Kings chip. Instead, it's the Celtics chipping the other way, and of course, really building and adding more bricks onto their lead. And tonight, a 30-point lead for the Celtics in this game flow. Franco, anything to you jump out on the screen about this lead tracker for you tonight?
So yeah, when we were going into the game, it was uh, kind of one of those things that this team has been very good at responding to games that we are expecting to be trap games. And I feel like the Celtics are very well aware of the games that were tendency breakers for this team in the past. A, for example, going into tonight and last year with the same roster, it would be a much more worn out team that is all right. Let's just make it to this Lakers game on Christmas because that's where we're heading out here for. And the team was able to round it off in the first at the end of the first quarter. And once the team was able to eat away at that first quarter lead that the Kings got out to on that 12 point when they got up to that 12-point lead, the Kings were able to hold their ground for a little bit of time and gave us a good fight until halftime. And it was it's really interesting to see that the Celtics were able to really step on the gas in that third quarter, which led to the Sacramento Kings trying to kill that momentum by calling almost all of their timeouts within the third quarter of that game. And what my old football coach told me this once. Once you have a, or Julian Edelman, he said, if you have a team down on the ground, you stomp on their neck. And I feel like the Celtics really did that, and it's when they're able to put in those rotation players. I think one of the things that's overlooked is how deep the Celtics team is. It's not as flashy as some of the other benches around the league, but we know what we're getting, and we're getting high energy players. And this third quarter is a really big showing of that. And once again, huge props to the team for making the third quarter adjustments of beginning to attack the rim and forcing the Kings to try to stop the Celtics momentum, which we've seen done in the past by teams calling that timeout and making that adjustment that will cause the Celtics to have that 20-point slip up in the third quarter. And the team was able to avoid it tonight.
And tonight, too, as well for the Celtics, I want to mention and highlight for this game that the Celtics absolutely beat the Sacramento Kings at their own game. Fast break points tonight, 30-6 in transition for the Celtics. 30-6. The Celtics scored 30 points in transition to the Sacramento Kings 6. The Sacramento Kings are one of the faster teams in the league. They're a team who wants to get up and down the floor. They want to run. And the Celtics coming into tonight, now no Tatum, of course, changes the landscape of this game significantly with all the personnel the Celtics are playing with. They played Sam Hauser a lot more minutes tonight. They started Sam Hauser. Of course, we saw O'Shea Brissett a little bit more than we saw him in Golden State. And you mentioned Lamar Stevens, unfortunately, still, even after a couple of good performances against his former team last week, still can't really crack consistent minutes down near the bottom of the rotation. And by that, I shouldn't say, consistent rotational minutes, but just something, right? Something for Lamar Stevens. But it's hard when you have other guys too. Svi Mikhailuk played 16 minutes tonight. And of course, Brissett 16 as well. Brissett only had 3 points, but 5 rebounds, 2 assists for O'Shea Brissett, and Sam Hauser, 4 of 6. 10 points. Just want to highlight them real quick before talking about the Celtics playing in transition. And that was really to me, the key in this game for the Celtics is being able to run up and down the floor, beat the Sacramento Kings at their own game, and just consistently be making shots and putting up points offensively, because 119 points, to give up 119 points, that's not amazing. But today's NBA, when you score 144 and give up 119, that's gonna do. That's gonna do on a regular season night like tonight out in California. And what the Celtics were able to do against the Kings was quite surprising in my mind, because I've watched a lot of Kings basketball as of late. I'm not gonna lie. I like watching the Kings. I like watching De'Aaron Fox. I like listening to Mark Jones. I like listening to our old guy. He's not really an old guy, but he's our former guy, Kyle Draper in Boston. He used to be on NBC Sports
Yep.
Boston back when it used to be CSN, flipped over to NBC Sports Boston. He was doing what we're doing now here on the Postgame. He used to be doing that for NBC Sports Boston with the Celtics. Now he's with the Kings. I enjoy watching them and him on the broadcast out there in Sacramento. And they're a team, I must say, they're a team who brings it every single night. They're a team who plays fast. They make a lot of shots. A lot of guys understand their role. There's a good vibe around the building. It's not just a built basketball team. A lot of teams, they're thrown together, and it takes time for chemistry to be gained over time. But the Sacramento Kings, from what they were able to do last season, ending that franchise's playoff drought, and of course, some of these players now, they're on their third year, maybe even fourth year together, depending on who you're talking about on the roster. And I think this Kings team is coming together quite well, and we'll see what kind of additions or never know, subtraction by addition. You never know at the deadline the Kings can make, but they're a legitimate ball club. And the fact the Celtics were able to come in on a second night of a back-to-back, no Jason Tatum, and be able to run up and down the floor and make shots the way they did, as well as get stops in crucial moments. And of course, that third quarter we see is a very crucial moment in the game too, where the Celtics just continue to pile it on, and they like you said, they stomped on their neck. They did not look back whatsoever. And in this game, it's very impressive the Celtics were able to go through what they were able to go through in this game and dominate in the fashion in which they dominated. So the Celtics tonight, props to the entire team on what they were able to do in Sacramento. Of course, their best player down, Jason Tatum, tonight. No Jason Tatum, they're still able to dominate the Sacramento Kings, and they do that in transition. But a big part of that transition play and that shot making for the Celtics tonight, a huge player, huge part of all of that, was our player of the game tonight, Derek White. And Derek White, I mean, my goodness, Franco, my goodness, Derek White is on this is a run where I believe the NBA starts looking at Derek White a little bit differently. Just a little bit differently, because Derek White, although these numbers of scoring aren't sustainable, right? He's not going to score 30. He's not going to score 25. He's not going to score 28 a game, right? Over the last two games, he's averaging 29 a game. It's not going to happen like that every single night. But Derek White, at the moment, is on a run of efficiency that we have really not seen within his career. And I believe this is in part of the Celtics' offensive talent and the weapons they own on their roster. Because the Celtics, going down their roster, it's Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. They're the focal points, right? But then you have Porzingis sitting right there. You have Drew Holiday sitting right there. And even off the bench, Peyton Pritchard. He's somebody who puts pressure on defenses. He's very aggressive going towards the rim, can shoot the ball. They have to think about him on the perimeter. Sam Hauser is somebody you have to think about on the perimeter. Al Horford is somebody, too, who, although you're maybe not thinking about him on the perimeter as much, he's somebody who can make a pass, make a good decision, and set up something nice offensively. And even sometimes somebody who can go to work in the post for you if so need be. And Derek White, within this plethora of offensive talent, he is being optimized and he is succeeding to the maximum. And tonight, 28 points, 2 rebounds, 7 assists. 28 points and 7 assists for Derek White tonight. Woo! Woo! And 3 blocks on 10 of 13 shooting from the floor. Absolutely efficient. It was probably one of his, if not the most efficient performance from Derek White this season. And then that 6 of 9 from 3-point line right there. It felt as if he had about 10 threes in this game. I was actually surprised he only ended the night with 6, but he was massive in making that 3-point shot in crucial moments of this game. And the 4 other shots that came within the arc, they looked like shots in which an all-star would make. He had a nice mid-range, like nice little step back that glided through the rim. He had one where I don't remember who was on him, but he had a mismatch on him. He took a guy off the dribble all the way to the basket and scored. And it was almost like, man, you realize how, well, I should say this happens a lot, but you realize how good NBA players really are in moments in which they receive a lot of usage, a lot of volume, and more opportunity. Because a lot of these guys were the guy at the last level, whether it was college, whether it was high school, whether it was some other level of basketball, right? These guys in the NBA, whether they're role players or stars today, were the guy at one point, right? They were all the guy at one point. And Derek White, you see that talent where at one point in time, this man was the guy. And of course, like I said, this type of volume, this type of usage isn't going to come towards Derek White every single game. But the fact that it can come towards him on a night like tonight and him be super effective and efficient with the ball in his hands more often, you gotta give it up towards Derek White and how well he's been playing in these games for the Celtics as of late. And some of these numbers, this one is without Jason Tatum tonight and no Al Horford, but this game, these type of numbers for Derek White, they've been fairly consistent as of late, and I don't expect them to necessarily continue later on down the line. But if he's being efficient within his role, period, which is what we want to see ultimately, this is the big point. Derek White is a huge plus to this ball club and somebody that I believe maybe within Celtics Nation we talk about him a lot and he receives his praise, but from others around the NBA, it's a huge joke that he's not a top 100 NBA player, but realistically to the casual fan, Derek White, a lot of people don't know who Derek White is, and it's unfortunate because of his impact on this Celtics team and how big it can be, especially on a night like tonight where they're missing a guy and he can step in and be an offensive force like he was. And like I said, this isn't going to be a consistent thing, but Derek White producing at this level, you love to see it, and you love to see him put up this type of performance for just his career numbers in general. But Franco, I'm going to pass it over to you here on Derek White. What did you see out of Derek White's performance tonight that impressed you so much on his 28.7 assist night in Sacramento?
This is just one of those ideal nights that you want to see from Derek White. And these numbers from the shooting range are too out of order for Derek White. These are some nights that I would like to see Derek White continue to be that third or fourth shooting option on the court, because even as great as Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis are, there are some points that just feeding Derek might be the safer option because of the fact that the 4 other players on the court are perennial all-stars in their own respective manners. And Derek White does not to say he doesn't, but maybe he doesn't get looked at as much as of a a threat as the other four people on the court. So he's kind of been the odd man out on the lineups. And what I love to see is when he is running the point guard, and I would love to see Drew Holiday included into it as well. Um, when the guards are really running the offense, that's when Jaylen Brown is able to have performances like he did tonight and have those high efficiency marks from the field, because they're getting basically served it on a silver platter because of how high the IQ is on the court for this team. Once they figure out how to feed each other, it will lead to them feeding themselves. And Derek White is the prime example of that.
I feel like this holiday season, Derek White, we've seen him in this Santa hat more than any other Celtics player. I think we've seen him 3 times since the holiday theme started on Celtics Talk Weekly postgame, which, of course, I hope everybody out there enjoys the holiday look here on Celtics Talk Weekly. But I think Derek White in that Santa hat, we've seen more than any other Celtics so far in December. And we'll see if anybody else grabs the Santa hat before Christmas, leading up to that Laker game, of course. But Derek White was fantastic tonight and deserved every bit of player of the game. But a couple of other players, I will say as well, maybe potentially you can make an argument they could have won player of the game. And one of those players mentioned earlier was Jaylen Brown, but another one I'm going to mention now, Drew Holiday, on the night almost came away with a triple-double on the evening. 21 points, 10 assists. So usually it's the assist category that players might struggle with a little bit, but 10 assists for Drew Holiday tonight, but 8 rebounds. Couldn't grab the 8 rebounds. And realistically, he could have walked away with a triple-double in this game if he played the last 3 minutes in garbage time, but he already
Sorry.
extended. It was already extended. Joe Mazzulla kept Drew Holiday in the game a little bit longer than maybe we all would have liked to go hunt those rebounds. They didn't even happen, and he played a couple of more minutes. But realistically, if he would have played the whole game, probably comes out with those last 2 and comes away with a triple-double. But regardless, a fantastic performance from Drew Holiday. 7 of 13 from the floor as well. 4 of 6 from 3. 3 of 3 from the free throw line. Got to the free throw line tonight a little bit. 2 steals, a block to go along with that for Drew Holiday. One of his more impressive performances of the season. And you were saying to me before the postgame show segment here that, Drew Holiday maybe doesn't look fully integrated within the Celtics system yet. Do you think tonight's game for Drew may have been the step in the right direction that he was looking for?
Yeah, and it's just going to come with time with him. And what I would love to see more out of him is what we saw in Milwaukee. And as we've said before, Milwaukee, he was more of the second star, more of the tandem player with Giannis, and Chris Middleton is the third amigo. And they were a team that there were nights that Drew Holiday was, okay, who is going to guard Drew Holiday tonight on offense? And I feel like he's just been so silent on the offensive side because they really don't know how to get the ball into his hands without it taking away from players like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, which I feel like is the complete opposite way of approaching it. And I think the ball should start in Drew or Derek's hands as casual guards, and they could start running an offense through there. And what Drew is doing here is really a positionless basketball, and it's hard to put a real finger on it because he's always on the best player, and he's doing real gritty work. Like he's taken on that Marcus Smart role completely. And as much as that's necessary on this team, he's Drew Holiday, and he can do more than Marcus Smart. And that's why we kind of replaced Marcus Smart with him during this offseason and felt comfortable going out and getting him. It's nights like these are the reasons why we made that final move when we thought the roster was going to be set with Malcolm Brogdon as the sixth man behind this behind Derek White. And I think that's going to come into play more as we get closer to playoff time, and we'll really get to appreciate his value.
I believe Drew Holiday, they're using him a little bit more off ball right
Yes,
now
very
than
off ball.
Milwaukee used him. And I believe that potentially we could see him be more involved within the offense as time moves along, for the fact of Derek White. I feel as if they're running more action with him at the top of the key, and Drew Holiday is either on the wing or he's in the
Down
corner.
low.
And yeah, in the dunker spot as well, where I I I feel as if in time we could see Drew Holiday run more of the action that Derek White sometimes runs, for the fact of Derek White was here last year, and there's just more of a cohesiveness and chemistry and a familiarity with him and, say, the Jays, and also just with Joe Mazzulla creating the offense as well and knowing what a player's capabilities are. Just think about this. Joe Mazzulla, he was even here, he was here with Ime Udoka. So it's not as if we brought in Joe Mazzulla and he was new last year. He was with Ime Udoka on Ime Udoka's staff before Ime Udoka was unfortunately ousted in Boston. But he was here to see Derek White in the 2022 run. He was here last year, of course, as our head coach, working with Derek White, and then coming into this season with Derek White. Drew Holiday, he's traded to the Celtics 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I mean, we're still getting acclimated to Drew Holiday being a Celtic. And we've talked about this on the postgame a couple of times already, where Drew Holiday, this has to be a mental shift that he is still getting used to, where he was a legitimate Milwaukee Buck going for the title with them just a couple of months ago with Giannis. He already has a ring too. Let's remind everybody that he has a ring with the Milwaukee Bucks, and now he's on a rival squad in Boston, which, of course, Franco, he probably came through Boston, didn't hear the most kind comments in the world. Now he's playing with this team. And I do feel as if there's a little bit of some familiarity with Derek White and having him run more action at the top of the key and have him handle the ball more than, say, Drew Holiday, who's only been here a couple of months. And I think as time moves on, we're going to see Drew Holiday be more and more integrated into the offense in a role that makes more sense for him and optimizes him along with the rest of the offense, and avoids him standing in positions of ineffectiveness for his game in itself. And maybe too, that's just part of the sacrifice. And it could be a mix of both on some nights moving forward. Let's be honest, like, we're going to see some nights where Drew Holiday isn't as involved just because of some of the other offensive star talent that we have in Brown, Tatum, Porzingis, even Derek White. Like we're talking about tonight, he had 28 points. Drew Holiday is going to sometimes fade into the fold, but I think moving forward, we're going to see more and more rhythm out of him and the rest of the squad. And ultimately tonight, he had a nice, almost triple double game, coming away with 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 10 assists to go along with 2 steals and a block on 7 of 13 shooting on the night, 4 of 6 from 3 as well. But another player who came off the bench, another guard we have to talk about tonight. And I sometimes really have no idea how to properly speak about this player, because on some nights he'll play like 15 minutes and it's like, all right, what was the impact there? What was the exact impact, right? Yet on other nights, he'll make a game, and make performance like this, create a performance like this, come out with a performance like this. And we're like, man, this guy is a legitimate bench guy. He's a legitimate sixth man, not sixth man of the year candidate, but he could be that level of player, maybe, right? And I'm talking about Peyton Pritchard. Okay, I'm talking about Peyton Pritchard right now. 20 points on the night for Peyton Pritchard. 6 of 12 from the floor, 6 of 11 from three. Also, 4 rebounds and 4 assists. Now, that's not like, whoa, all-star level stat line or anything, but for Peyton Pritchard, who, like I mentioned, on some nights, he'll play 15 minutes, come away with a minus 13, be 0 of 1, and you're going to ask yourself, what exactly was the production out there from Peyton Pritchard tonight? Because we know his size sometimes compromises a little bit of his defensive ability, especially against longer, lengthier teams. And then offensively, if you're putting up an 0 of 1 shooting line in 15 minutes, I mean, he's not doing too much, right? If he's putting up that level of production. However, tonight, 20 points, 6 of 11 from three, and 4 assists to go along with 4 rebounds as well. And his presence is vastly known to everyone in Sacramento and, of course, for the Celtics tonight. Peyton Pritchard, I want to see more and more of these type of games from Pritchard. Now, let me disclaim this. We're not going to see 11 3-point attempts from Pritchard every single night. It's just not going to happen, folks. Like, it's not going to transpire in that way every single night. But you want to see Peyton Pritchard be efficient with his looks. And when he does have this type of volume, capitalize on it, in which he did tonight. And Peyton Pritchard, I think, for the value in which the Celtics have him at, it's just going to be like this for the Celtics and Peyton Pritchard, where on some nights there's going to be productional issues. On other nights, he's going to look like a potential sixth man of the year candidate. Like, if he put up the stat line every night on the bench, he'd be a sixth man of the year candidate. But Peyton Pritchard, with his opportunities tonight, good for the Celtics. They have good value on him. It's going to be back and forth. And this is what you kind of, from a bench perspective, the Celtics want to beef up their bench, because Peyton Pritchard is ultimately one of the main guys you look at off the bench. And there's some talent there, undoubtedly, but the consistency within his game is just not always there on a night-to-night basis. And glad to see this type of performance from Pritchard tonight, but ultimately what the Celtics are still getting out of him from a night-to-night basis, pretty well the same thing we talked about all season. Like I said, Sacramento Kings, in a night where Jason Tatum's not in the lineup, more volume goes to other players. Peyton Pritchard did a good job with the shots that came his way. But Franco, I want to get your thoughts, though, tonight on Peyton Pritchard and his 20-point performance out in Sacramento.
Yeah, and Peyton Pritchard, and the man of many names, preseason P, Parquet P, what was Drew Carter saying tonight? West Coast P. He had a great night tonight, and he's one of those energizers that we've needed to see, and that's exactly the role that we were looking for from him. If it makes sense, he's going to be kind of a Eddie House on this roster, a spark plug guy who will come in, and if he needs to drop in 4 threes tonight. I find it very funny that his stat line is 12 field goals and 11 of them were 3-pointers. So I thought that was pretty comical and the definition of Missoula ball. But shout out to Peyton Pritchard. He posted us on his story tonight. So if you're listening on your West Coast trip, great game tonight. And I just really want to see more of him being that facilitator off that bench. And when you can take out Derek White and Jrue Holiday, as we were saying, keep the ball in the guard's hands to initiate the play and let Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis work their magic on getting open and getting into a position that they know they can score in, that just makes their lives 10 times easier. And we don't see those forced turnovers or those what people were saying, hucked up shots. We will start to see more calculation in the way this team is moving, but all around this team's bench is really exceeding the expectations that people had for it going into this season, I must say.
I will say about Peyton Pritchard, what's so underrated about his role right now is the fact of the inconsistency within the minutes you see in that type of role. Because he's legitimately our eighth guy right now.
Yep.
He's our eighth guy. You have in front of him, you have the Jays, Brown and Tatum. You have Brown, Tatum, Holiday, White, Porzingis, Horford, and then Sam Hauser. Okay, that's who's in front of him right there. 7 guys right in front of him, and you could argue, well, Sam Hauser is going to be in front of him because Sam Hauser is 6'6", 6'7", and we can talk about him real quick. 10 points on the night for Sam Hauser, 4 of 6 from the floor, 2 of 4 from 3. A nice little bounce back game from Sam Hauser after an 0 of 6 night last night in Golden State. Comes out tonight, starts. I thought Sam Hauser defensively tonight was actually nice. I thought he was a nice defender tonight, and throughout the season, I think he's been much improved from where he was last year and, of course, 2 years ago. And that's why Sam Hauser is ultimately above Peyton Pritchard. But Peyton Pritchard as the 8th guy in the lineup, it's hard to play an inconsistent amount of minutes the way that he does. And tonight he plays almost 30 minutes, no Jason Tatum in the lineup. And it's surprising that the Celtics were able to slot him in for 30 minutes, despite playing also Derek White and Holiday 30 minutes and then 34 minutes for Jrue Holiday. But Peyton Pritchard in his role, it's very hard to gauge sometimes because of the inconsistent minutes, the inconsistent opportunities, because like you highlighted, 11 3-point attempts for Peyton Pritchard tonight, which means he had 1 2-point attempt on the entire night. And typically, if you're looking at a starting guard, right, if you're saying Peyton Pritchard, if he was to be our starting guard, right, or our definitive 6th man, definitively, okay, definitively, not 8th guy, not sometimes 6th man, right, like a Malik Monk type of player, right? You would want him taking way more than 1 2-point attempt. You'd want to see either your 6th man guard or your starting guard go towards the basket and put pressure on defenses, because too, let's say this about Peyton Pritchard. He is somebody who is very quick twitch towards the rim and somebody who can actually take bigger guys and slower defenders off the dribble. So it's not as if he doesn't have the inability to do that either. And I believe this is why it's kind of hard to gauge Peyton Pritchard in a sense, because he takes 11 threes tonight, and you just know that if he's in a different role within a different team or in a different offense, or just this is an embarrassment of riches the Celtics have on offense with this team. If it's a little bit different for Peyton Pritchard and he's playing a different role, I think it just looks a lot different for him than it does playing this role with the Celtics, and that's why it's so hard to gauge his game, and why I think too it's a little unfair. It's a little unfair to maybe pass some bench blame on Peyton Pritchard on some nights in which the bench looks a little lackadaisical because of the fact Peyton Pritchard, he plays an inconsistent role, and sometimes it's going to fluctuate. Sometimes on nights where guys like Tatum and Horford aren't in the lineup, he is our 6th man tonight. And you saw he scored 20 points on the night. So Peyton Pritchard does receive some unfair criticism for some of his bad nights, because you see on nights where he receives some opportunity, he can really make the most out of them. And like I said earlier, though, with Peyton Pritchard, the Celtics, despite all of whether they're getting good performances out of him or not, they still have good value on his contract and his deal, and I still believe that he's a hard-nosed player who consistently puts forth the effort within his game and tries on a nightly basis, despite the fact he's paid. So that within a player the Celtics have off their bench for good value on his deal, it's a player you love to have around if you're the Celtics, despite whether or not he's putting up this type of performance tonight or an 0 of 1 performance in 15 minutes. Unfortunately, we would like to see a lot less of those, but the Celtics, for what they have in Peyton Pritchard, it's good. Not a lot of teams have this type of value in a player the Celtics have, like Peyton Pritchard. So he, of course, shines tonight in Sacramento. Another player who played a lot of minutes. I don't know if you're going to define this as a lot of minutes, but 18 minutes, 19 minutes tonight against his former team. Mises Queta. Queta. He maybe, just maybe, might be proving himself to be a legitimate rotational big man in the NBA. 6 points for Queta tonight and 8 rebounds to go along with those 6 points. Now, I will say he's been getting in foul trouble a little bit as of late. 5 personal fouls tonight, and that's something you definitely want to see a player work on within his game. Some players, think of a player, Walt Lemon Jr. a couple of years ago. Maybe some defensive issues because of his size, but offensively the game was certainly there. But a huge part of his game was the fact every time somebody drove on him, he would just hack them. He'd foul them, right? And Queta, maybe that's something that ultimately needs some improvement within his game, especially as a big guy who's going to see a lot of drivers come at him towards the rim. He's going to have to work on his ability to not foul, which is such an underrated ability in basketball, and of course staying in the game and staying out of foul trouble throughout games. But Queta starting to look like might be a legitimate NBA big rotational guy. You never know with these type of things. Played for the Sacramento Kings, of course, last season, comes over to the Celtics. He's on a two-way deal now. Celtics give him a little bit of a run tonight, but what do you think of Queta's performance, not only tonight, but as of late for this team?
So they really have no other choice but to play Queta in these minutes right now. And right now I think they still have that one open roster spot, and because Queta is technically on a two-way, I think Queta has made enough of a case for him to get that contract turned into a one-way and continue to finish out the season with the Celtics. One of the major concerns and everyone is looking for is adding to the Celtics big man depth. They're looking at players like Isaiah Stewart. You'll hear names just all around the league of rotational big men who can come in and give that production. I will take Neemias Queta on a two-way contract, giving me 8 rebounds in 9 minutes. And also when he plays out there, he's still working his way around, and there are still some imperfections to his game that are going to take time and experience. It seems like a lot of his fouls are stupid ones that are just someone going up and jumping into him and him playing it too aggressively, and he's going to mold into that guy, and he's someone that you could have rotate in and out with Cornet, and they both, I would say, Cornet and him are two different styles of backup center. So Queta, if you're looking for more of an athletic defensive anchorage, you go that route, or if you go Cornet, you're getting the offensive side and the IQ that he brings to the table.
Right. I think the Celtics, it's a little weird from the beginning of the season that we were talking about the big man spot so profoundly. I'm like, oh man, the Celtics really need to add at this spot. And Al Horford and Porzingis. Yeah, Al Horford, he's 38, and Porzingis, sometimes we already saw a calf strain at the beginning of the season, missed 4 games, been dealing with it, managing it, missed yesterday, managing the injury, and we talked about the Celtics potentially needing another big, but maybe that's not so much of a conversation anymore. That Luke Cornett, he's not even in the lineup right now. He's injured as well with an abductor issue, and I believe he told somebody last week. I don't remember who he exactly told, but I believe Brian Scalabrine said he told somebody they're supposed to be back in a week. Like, he literally was just like, yeah, I'll be back in a week. So I don't know what that means for Luke Cornett moving forward, if it's actually a serious injury or not. He's ultimately missing games with it. But if he's in the lineup, Kata's in the lineup, all of our bigs are healthy, I don't know. I kind of like this big man rotation that we have right now, and do believe that we have some of the size necessary to go up against some of the other teams in which we will eventually face on our way potentially to the NBA Finals. So we'll see how this forms later on in the season as the season continues to move forward. I think the Celtics front office and just the entire organization, they want to see more out of Kata right now. And that's not necessarily in terms of performance. I'm saying that in terms of just wanting to see him play basketball, because I think this does have a big effect on the Celtics season and what they could potentially target closer to the trade deadline. Because if you have a player like Kata who may be deserving of a roster spot, he's on a 2-way contract, like you mentioned right now. The Celtics have one standard roster spot open in which they can fill. If you have a guy playing this well, maybe he slots into that final roster spot. Maybe he makes up part of the big man rotation. Maybe he's a guy you can sort of trust in spot minutes later on down the line. And the Celtics don't need to look at the big man spot come February, come trade deadline, buyout market. And they're looking more at, maybe we add another wing. Maybe we add another big guard. Maybe something in that regard. And the Celtics might not look towards the bigs as much. Or let me just mention this as well. I hate to mention this because it involves some of our players being shipped away, but trade value for guys as well. If Kata is playing this well, maybe he is somebody that he's not going to be a needle mover within a package for specific players, but maybe he is a salary piece in which a team looks at and goes, okay, yeah, maybe we can do something here with this asset, right? Like, he's not a total zero. He's not just okay, we acquired you and we're going to waive you. Maybe he is somebody who he can be a third or fourth big within our rotation. Maybe he can be even a little bit more. So what Kate is going through right now, I believe, is a little bit of an audition from the Celtics, and I think we're going to see him play a little bit more as time moves on. And the Celtics, they rested Al Horford. No, they rested Kristaps Porzingis essentially last night. They rested Al Horford tonight. Kata comes in and he puts up 2 performances in a row. First double-double in his career last night. Tonight, 6 points and, of course, 8 rebounds. He got in a little bit of foul trouble. Maybe he plays even a couple more minutes if he's not in foul trouble tonight. But 2 solid performances from Kata back-to-back in a row. Something you love to see as a Celtics fan, as somebody of the Celtics organization. And, of course, for Kata in himself, inching his way further towards potentially being within a rotation. And, of course, being in a rotation means you're going to get paid even more. So Kata's performances as of late, very optimistic point of view from all of us here at Celtics Talk Weekly, I will say, in regards to Kata so far. But I want to look at the other side of things for this game tonight. We've talked about a lot of individual performances for the Celtics, and this game was full of them for the Celtics, of course. Porzingis, he had 24 on the night. Just want to mention his line before we move on to the Kings real quick, because 24 points, 7 of 8. I'm not sure. I think you mentioned here on the post game. I always forget if we mentioned it here on the post game, or if we're talking before the game or talking after the game. But you mentioned earlier about Kristaps Porzingis's free throw attempts, along with Jaylen Brown's free throw attempts as well. 7 free throw attempts for Jaylen Brown, 8 for Porzingis, and they both miss only 1 on the night. But 24 points for Porzingis, like I said, too. 8 free throw attempts. Love to see that within Porzingis' game. Kind of mentioned that on the post game the other night where I was like, you might want to. I want to see Porzingis instead of settling, chucking up a couple more threes. I want to see him maybe be a little bit more aggressive, use his length. And he was 7 of 11 tonight, only 3 of 4 from 3. So majority of his shots did come from 2-point land on the night for Porzingis. But I was going to move on to the Kings, but before we move on and talk about Sacramento a little bit, because I want to talk about all the Celtics opponents at the end of the show this year. Before we move on, Kristaps Porzingis coming off this calf strain as of late, managing the injury. How do you think he looks coming off this calf injury? Do you think he looks 100% up to this point? Do you think they're just managing this injury from some of the past performances we've seen as of late from Porzingis?
So to add on to what we were saying about Neemias Queta and the comfortability with the center position, it's kind of challenging to say that at this point we're only near and around 30 games in, and we're already looking at Kristaps and Al Horford flip-flopping on nights. Oh, who's going to be healthy for tonight and who's not going to be? How is that going to affect this and that? So if Neemias Queta and Luke Cornett are going to be those answers, it's going to be a major step up that's going to be necessary for them to do that. And I'm not just talking being able to come in for those 15 minutes. And I mean, it's going to be coming in and being able to fill that center position instead of throwing a Lamar Stevens in at center. And I feel like you could start to play with more roles in that sense if they look in other options. But I think that this team hasn't even, it's scary to say because they just played a Western Conference contender, and we get to say that their offense isn't even fully unlocked yet, and they had 144 points tonight.
For real. What they did tonight, I don't think we're as excited as we should be about what they really did, and they being the Celtics, because
we're New Englanders. That's why they hate us. We're so like granted to greatness. It's our expectation for this year.
I mean, it's literally I was talking too about the Red Sox earlier. The whole nation around the Red Sox, right? It's like every single offseason, it's like, go after the big names, go after the big names, go after the big names. And it's like, just traded Alex Verdugo. Like, what do you think the Red Sox are going to go after, like, big legitimate names right now? Like, probably not. But the fan expectation is that the Red Sox are going after big names, okay? They're going to go compete. They're going to go compete with the Yankees and the Dodgers, because we all know in baseball every single year it's never the high payroll teams, right? Like, they can make the playoffs, but they can't win the World Series for some reason. But aside from baseball, I totally lost my track here. Boston fans, we don't get excited over regular season games as much as we should, because like you mentioned, like, fans demand greatness around Boston. You could debate. So I would say fans around Boston deserve greatness. Maybe some others, fan bases around America, might not agree after the current 20-year run that the city is on with championships right now. And I believe, like, if nobody wins the championship this year, it'll be like the longest streak in however long for Boston. But realistically, for the Celtics team, I think the city of Boston, this is a team they could really get excited about, not only because of how hard they play and how much harder they have been playing together now. That was something I was harping on earlier this season, but I think they've upped their intensity a bit to the point where it's a team we can really be proud of in how hard they play, but also the fact of how talented and how dominant they can actually be, because we're 21-6 right now. And I mentioned this on Postgame last night. All 6 of our losses are on the road in moments in games where we could have legitimately won if we just handle a moment of the game a little bit differently. A little bit differently in a certain particular moment of the game. It's not as if we have not been blown out yet. We haven't been blown out. We haven't been handled by an opponent yet. There has not been one opponent that has handled the Celtics. All 6 of the losses have been on the road in moments of adversity. And yes, there's a little bit of uncomfortability from the fact of the Celtics haven't really overcome that yet. But tonight was a little bit of that, overcoming an adversity of Jason Tatum not being in the lineup, going to Sacramento on the second night of a back-to-back after you lose a hellacious game in Golden State, in San Francisco, the night before in overtime. A ton of dudes play 40 minutes in that game. And also, this team comes out tonight and, like you mentioned, 144 points against a Western Conference contender. Absolutely outrageous that the Celtics are able to do this right now. And some of their losses, like I mentioned, all of them have not come in dominant fashion for the other team whatsoever. The Celtics led in those games, all of those games in which they lost, they led at a certain point in time. And like I said, they could have handled certain situations a little bit differently. Man, they could be maybe this is not practical, but they could maybe be undefeated right now. 27-0. If those 6 games go just a little bit differently, they're not crazy losses in any manner whatsoever. And the other 21 wins have been dominant wins in the fashion in which we saw almost tonight. And this is the type of game and opponent we want to see out of the Celtics moving forward and facing this adversity, because, oh my goodness, the last 2 years ago, we were doing the postgame 2 years ago, the Celtics, that team overcame adversity time and time again and would put up performances like these. Not necessarily 144, 119 style, right? But performances where they're facing a legitimate opponent, where we look at it and go, that is a team that the Celtics, they're going to have some problems with them, okay? They're going to have some problems. And what do? The Celtics come out and absolutely handle them. And that's what you want to see out of a ball club who wants to win the championship, wants to win the title. You want to see them handle opponents in which are supposedly below them, but could potentially, of course, like I said, cause them problems. They're going to cause them problems. You still want to see the Celtics handle this type of game. And they ultimately did in Sacramento tonight, off of what was an absolutely terrible loss in Golden State. And the fact the team was able to do this, it's only December. I will say this. It's only December. There's a long way to go. Long way to go. Okay, we're only 26 games into the season right now, 27 games into the season. A long way to go on the schedule for the Celtics. But the fact of the matter is, in a moment of adversity, this ball club now has something to show for on the road, which is something they didn't necessarily have in abundance coming into tonight. And they can put this on their resume. Players can feel confident about this. And even players who don't get as much of a run, and we talked about a lot of them tonight, they know that when their moment of opportunity comes up, if we ever need a next man up moment, that they're gonna look back on a performance like this and remember how well they played and how well they're able to play with other guys who are starting and with other guys who receive more minutes. So tonight's Celtics win was ultra impressive from multiple angles, and the team getting it done in this setting and in this situation, I certainly did not expect it to be like this tonight, Franco, at all. But the Celtics were able to pull off the win. Uh, we're inching towards the back end portion of our show here on Celtics Talk Weekly post game. I want to talk about the Kings real quick, the Celtics opponent, because they are a team where they're making a name for themselves out west. They made the playoffs last year, of course, and coming into this year, they're a squad in which could potentially make some noise again, and they've established themselves. But for you, Franco, looking at the Kings roster, right? Just looking at who the Kings threw out tonight, do you feel like this was more of a kind of a fluky type game? Because they are a team that goes up and down the floor, and sometimes these type of teams kind of give up performances where if they're not on and the other team is on, like we saw the Celtics, they made 22 3-pointers tonight. It kind of looked like this downhill slope for them. But on some other nights, if they're on, the other team's not, we can see the result be flip-flopped. Do you believe this was more of a fluky result for Sacramento in their play style, or do you believe in the Sacramento Kings even after this result tonight and as a potential contender in the Western Conference? I will say this before you go. I still believe in the Kings after this performance tonight, although I will say their play style probably isn't sustainable long term.
So I put a lot of I put teams in separate tiers in the NBA, and it's not really, or in separate groups. And the Sacramento Kings are in that group with teams like Pacers, Timberwolves, Magic now, teams that are really just under the radar and are really deep. Like the Sacramento Kings starting lineup is, I believe, has been the same since they traded for Kevin Huerter about 1 or 2 years ago. So this lineup has been playing with each other for a very long time and is a team that has developed that chemistry and flew under the radar for so many years. Sacramento Kings, they've went through every phase and haven't seen this light of success, or even when they had DeMarcus Cousins in his prime on this team, weren't seeing the same amount of success that they are now. And I think that their time is coming. It didn't happen last year, but they are going to upset someone on the Western side of things during the playoffs. And they're not the team you want to see during round one because of how talented, the whole energy, the fact they have that beam that they light off after every game. It's just a whole little story that I think they could push pretty far with, especially how well-rounded they are on their bench.
The Kings, I believe, are a team that moving forward, they're kind of in that category of squad where I like them. I love them. Like I love the Kings. I love the Pacers and their depth and the vibe that both teams bring. I mean, I love seeing teams want to win in small markets, okay? Because Sacramento's a small market, Indiana's a small market. Some of these guys are paid within their small markets, and I want to see these guys uplift these markets, right? And that's exactly what guys like Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox, of course, on the West Coast, are doing. And what's crazy, too, they could have been on the same team right now in Sacramento if they would have played that a little bit better. Sabonis, he's a solid big man, don't get me wrong, but Tyrese Halliburton, you'd definitely rather maybe have him at this point. But
De'Aaron Fox.
But ultimately, the Kings are a team that I feel great about as an NBA fan. Like, take away all the Celtics gear, right? Like, I'm an NBA fan at heart. The Celtics weren't to exist, right? And The Kings are a team that all of a sudden, after years of putrid, awful play, right? And the highlight of some of those years was really DeMarcus Cousins. And I saw a video of him earlier after his 55-point performance, the "That's Ridiculous"
Yeah.
interview. And just want to just point out too about DeMarcus Cousins. Dropped 55 points that game. That was back when the pace was not as crazy as it was today. Teams weren't shooting as many threes. 55 points was just a little bit more impressive for a center, a do-it-all center who I believe was really one of the best centers of our entire generation. And
In the first man spot.
unfortunately, torn ACL and a torn Achilles back to back completely derailed his career. And I, 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 I hate to see that for DeMarcus Cousins, but man, he was so dominant for the Sacramento Kings. But those years, you think about, he was the dominant force. He was their only bright spot for so many years. And now they finally have a team that looks good together. They finally have a team that wants to be together, wants to win together, wants to bring success to the city of Sacramento uh, in a way that's practical for, of course, the squad. Some of those teams of the past, they were just going nowhere. They were sputtering nowhere. This team, I believe in it a lot more than past Sacramento Kings teams. And I believe that this Kings team, in the long run, will run into some issues around their play style because they do run up and down the floor a lot in half court. A lot of these teams that like to run up and down the floor, the reason they like to run up and down the floor is because they're young, athletic, fast, and they're not as good at operating in the half court as a team like the Celtics, as a team like the Miami Heat, as a team like the Denver Nuggets, who are just experienced veteran squads who can operate in the half court with superstar level of players. You look at the Kings, they're not quite up to that same level as those teams, as those contenders. They play more up and down style of basketball, and I think we talked about it on the post game. I think that tends to potentially, catch up. Rob said it a lot on the post game earlier this season, and I totally agree with him. It catches up to teams in the playoffs when you do have to play that half court setting and you're schemed against for 7 straight games. It becomes a lot more evident that your play style is a little bit more flawed and that you can't play an all around style of basketball. But the Sacramento Kings, I believe, are going to be a great regular season team, and they could potentially become more of a half court oriented team, maybe a couple moves around the deadline. Who knows? Maybe they hone in on that. It's only game 26 of the season, ultimately. And we see a Sacramento Kings team that goes into the playoffs a little bit differently. Tonight was certainly not the best showing. For the Celtics Nation, of course, I'm in cahoots with a lot of Celtics fans. So I honestly wanted the Kings to show just a little bit. I didn't want the Kings to win, although I did put some money on the Kings. We'll not talk about that point. But I didn't want the Kings to win, but ultimately I wanted them to show a little bit of something to Celtics Nation. It's like, oh yeah, the Kings are kind of that team, but they couldn't quite do it against the Celtics tonight, unfortunately, and they fall 144 to 119. But that's my whole spiel on the Sacramento Kings so far this season. We will not see them again till later in the year. Not really sure. Let me just pull this up. We'll see the Sacramento Kings sometime later in the year at some point. Yeah, we're not, folks. This is why we talk about teams at the end of the post-game show right after we face them, because we don't face the Sacramento Kings again until April 5th. April 5th. What is this post-game going to look like in our talk about the Sacramento Kings going to look like April 5th when we face them again? And what could our team look like at that point in time? Who knows? But nearing the end of this post game, tonight's game, the Celtics beat the Sacramento Kings 144 to 119. As we close off this post game, Franco, any last thoughts on tonight's dominant Celtics performance out in California?
Yeah, it's just the picture perfect response, and I feel like Joe Mazzulla it might bite him at some point, but I feel like he is an avid listener to the haters, and loves to hear what the constructive criticisms are about him when, let's say, Felger and Maz are talking about this game, which they probably didn't even watch. They're going to say, Joe Mazzulla is going to go into a back-to-back and blow it. And he's really stepped up in that aspect of facing challenges that he has seen be challenges for him in the past. And next Saturday we are going south again to LA to face off with the Clippers before our Christmas Day matchup, and I think the Clippers are going to face a good strong match. This is our first time seeing this new look Clippers roster with the 5 all-star or the 4 all-star lineup, and this should be a really fun game to watch as long as everyone's healthy.
Yes, I'm entirely excited for this next matchup because of the fact the Clippers, we're not facing the Clippers like, oh, they're trying to get their footing under them. Oh, like, here we go. They're hitting their stride right now a little bit, and they're in a hot streak. And I want to see the Celtics face teams at their pinnacle, at their max, fully healthy. Hopefully, we get to see both teams fully healthy on Saturday before the Christmas game. I do worry just a little bit that there may be some resting strategically going into the Christmas game because the league they briefed teams on this already before the season. They discussed with teams, look, when you have a major primetime game right here, schedule your rest around the game, right? Don't schedule on this particular day or like they'll look at schedules, right? 2 weeks in advance and they'll go, look, if you're planning rest days and it leads up right here, it's going to end up being a rest day on the national TV game. But if you switch this rest day 2 weeks in advance, then the combination plays out where you're resting on different days. So I kind of maybe worry just a little bit, maybe just potentially going into the 2 game stretch in LA that if we maybe potentially rest some guys for that Clippers game for the insurance of we got to have our full healthy squad against the Lakers on prime time Christmas Day. And for some people, now not for us, some people think the NBA season starts on that day. I honestly, no, the entirety of my NBA viewing experience, I've never experienced the NBA starting on Christmas Day in any regard at all. Football's still going on. If anything, the NBA season kind of starts, I don't know, like after, almost like after the All-Star break in a sense. It really, really does. But moving forward, right now, for the Celtics going into that game against the Clippers, hopefully we can field a whole squad and the Clippers field a whole squad. Haven't really seen that since our 2019 matchup against the Clippers literally 4 years ago when we went into that building and lost. I don't know if it was double overtime or it was overtime, but one of the most exhilarating games that we've seen. And of course, later that year, Paul George missed the second half, but that's when Jason Tatum broke out and was an absolute superstar. But now this time around, Clippers have Harden. They finally look like an interesting team. The Celtics get to face them on Saturday. I'm entirely excited for the matchup coming up. But tonight, the Celtics, they take care of business before going into that big Clippers matchup. And, of course, the big Lakers matchup afterwards in LA. Sure, the Celtics, particularly Tatum and Brown, the 2-star players, they probably have a lot scheduled in LA this week and are probably already on their way there as we speak right now. But they take care of business today in Sacramento, 144 to 119 against the Sacramento Kings. And this post-game show, of course, this is our 26th game of the season. We're a couple games out from Christmas. I think we're rolling along quite nicely, like the Celtics, who moved to 21-6 on the night. But like I always say, closing out this show, folks, thank you all for listening. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. Alongside of me here, Franco, My wonderful co-host did an excellent job at flying the plane earlier in the show. But like I always say, thank you all for listening, and go Celtics.